I'm thankful that you took time today to pull up a seat. I hope these few minutes together help you follow Jesus better by deepening your relationship with Him and helping you live intentionally for Him every day. Hey, I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen today, but I also want to just thank you for putting up with the first couple of episodes. We were working out some kinks, and I'm trying to get used to the camera and the mic and not talking to anybody in the room, which we're doing a lot of lately at church. And but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your emails. Thank you for your texts. Just to encourage me, and we'll continue to try to do this better and better, and I hope that it does help you grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ. Today we start a new series on the spiritual disciplines. I love the spiritual disciplines. I love to try to practice them, but hear me say I'm not great at it. I've been tweaking my relationship with Jesus for a while. Some things work, some things haven't worked for me. I'm not perfect at all the disciplines. Matter of fact, there's some of them I don't even do a lot. The ones that kind of stand out to me the most are the ones that we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks. But I think the disciplines are something that we need to do. When it comes to them, I'm not perfect. I don't have it all figured out. I'm kind of learning more. I'm trying things out. I'm trying to find out what works for me. And I want you to hear me say that you have some freedom in this. Just because it works for me doesn't necessarily means it's going to work for you. So experiment, try new things, and see how you can grow in your relationship with Jesus. So, what's a spiritual discipline? I'm going to give you two definitions that I kind of came up with, and then we're going to kind of talk through one of them to kind of drive the rest of today's podcast. But a spiritual discipline is a habit, a rhythm, or a practice that increases your intimacy with God and helps you mature toward Christ-likeness. The second definition, so that I can wrap my brain around something simple, my second definition is the things that we do to put ourselves in the position to connect with Jesus so that He can change us, okay? So we're going to use the first definition to kind of drive our conversation, and just to remind you what it is, the habits, rhythms, and practices that increase your intimacy with God and help you mature toward Christ-likeness. Let's break down that definition. Habits, rhythms, and practices, okay? Some of those words you're going to connect with. One of those words might drive you crazy. Habits might trigger something negative inside of you. So maybe rhythms is more of a good word for you. Or maybe you're just one of those people that has everything scheduled out. And so habits or practices or even disciplines might be a great word for you. Find the one that works best for you and that you connect with, and use that for your definition. Then the thing that we see in that is, as we practice these things, as we work these rhythms into our life, we develop an intimacy with Jesus. Intimacy is a weird word sometimes, but it simply means, in this context, how well do you really know Jesus? Have you made your experience with Jesus personal? Is it yours? I'm not talking about just know the facts about Him, but have you experienced the person and work of Jesus? Have you experienced His grace and His salvation? Have there been moments in your life where you have felt Him present? I believe as we practice the disciplines, I believe as we make those habits and change our rhythms a little bit to include these spiritual disciplines, that our intimacy with Jesus will go up, will increase, but we'll have those moments of spiritual connectedness more often. So instead of having them every 2 years, maybe we'll have them every couple of weeks or every couple of months. But intimacy is just, are you personally experiencing the person and work of Jesus Christ? Okay. The second thing that we see in the definitions is just a maturation toward Christ-likeness. The more we practice the disciplines, the more we're going to think like Jesus, the more we're going to act like Jesus, the more that we're going to speak like Jesus. So our disciplines, the habits, they change who we are. They shape us into Christ-likeness. We talked a little bit about that in episode 5 when we focused on committing to spiritual growth. Go back and check that one out if you haven't. But Christ-likeness is simply doing things that Jesus would do. And as we practice the disciplines, we're going to start to do life like Jesus. We're going to start to live like Jesus. So what are the disciplines? There are a ton of them listed out there. There are books on them. You can check out Whitney and Willard and Rebecca Lyons and Richard Foster. Those are some great places to start as you're trying to think about the disciplines. The list, if you combine them all, there's 20 something, I think. So over the series, we're going to just kind of focus on 5. And here's the 5 that we're going to look at. We're going to look at Bible reading and journaling together, okay? Don't get scared by the word journaling. We'll talk about that in next week's series, in next week's episode. But Bible reading and journaling. We're going to talk about prayer. I think that's key. I think we're going to talk about community one week, and we're going to talk about solitude one week. And then the last one we're going to do is the last spiritual discipline that we're going to talk about is Sabbath. So we're going to look at those. Over the next 5 weeks, we're going to look at those spiritual disciplines, those habits, and try to figure out not just what they are, but how we can practice them, how you can implement these and make them part of your natural weekly rhythm, okay? So here's just some benefits of practicing the spiritual disciplines. We've talked about a couple of them already. Even in our definition, we see that it's going to build intimacy with Jesus. We're going to experience him more often. Even we see Jesus even practicing the disciplines and getting off and being with his Father and praying with his Father so that he can be the person that God wants him to be. But we also see in the Old Testament, Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. As we slow down, as we practice these disciplines, as we make them part of our lives, we're going to know God more. So we're going to have that intimacy with God. The second thing we're going to see is just that spiritual development. We're going to grow up in our Christ likeness. We're going to look and act and think more like Jesus. We've already talked about that. We're going to develop the fruits of the Spirit. That's another part of our spiritual maturity. We're just going to be more patient, be more kind, be more loving, be all those things that we see Paul describe as the fruits of the Spirit. As we practice the disciplines, we're also going to learn to, not just to learn, but to live in victory over our sin. I think sin is our past sin. We just kind of keep dealing with it. But the more that we practice the disciplines, we're going to feel and live victoriously over our sin because of what we experience in the person and work of Jesus. And then the last thing that we, as a benefit of practicing the disciplines, is that you and I are going to be better equipped to make a difference for the kingdom of God. So you and I are going to be ready to live for Jesus. We're going to be able to witness for Jesus. We're going to be able to shine and be that light that he's asked us to be because of the spiritual discipline. So we're going to, as we practice these things in the quietness of our home or in the quietness of our lives, and we get alone in the Bible, it's going to help us be more equipped to live for the kingdom, okay? So those are the benefits. Some reasons that we don't practice the disciplines. The first reason we don't practice the disciplines is because we think they're for the super Christians. We think they're for the ministers. We think they're for the staff. We think they're for the missionaries that go overseas. But that's not what they're not for the super Christians. Matter of fact, the super Christians weren't super Christians until they started practicing the disciplines. So the spiritual disciplines are to help all of us grow in our maturity. Christ wants a relationship with you, and the disciplines are his gift to us to help make that relationship happen. So the disciplines are for everyone. They're supposed to be practiced in the middle of our days, in just the everydayness of life. The disciplines should be part of our regular routine and part of our habits. So they're not just for the super Christian. They're for the teacher or the student or the stay-at-home mom or the businesswoman or the entrepreneur trying to keep his business going. So that the disciplines are for everybody, okay? The second reason, and when I say this one, I'm talking to me too. Don't think I'm singling anybody out, but we say that we're too busy. Seriously? How many episodes did you binge last week on Netflix? Or how many times did I pick up my phone and jump into the app and start scrolling, and then 45 minutes later, oh, I've just wasted all that time. So we say that we're too busy. I don't think we're too busy. I just think we've got our priorities kind of out of place. Then the final reason that we don't practice the disciplines is because we don't know how. I believe part of that's true. I believe we don't know how. The church tells us to read the Bible. The church tells us to pray. The church, we read about these things that we're supposed to do, but we don't always we don't always do a good job of training people on how to do them. So I hope this series helps you to know how to do them, and so that you can practice them, so that you can implement them, so that you can restructure your week and restructure your habits and work these disciplines into your life. Don't forget, experiment and try some things that are going to work for you. Okay. Just because don't compare your spiritual journey to my spiritual journey. I don't compare mine to other people that are ahead of me. I learned from them, but at the same time, I realized that their relationship with Jesus is personal and it's different. Some are more wired to do art stuff. And so maybe sometimes during their time with Jesus, they get out a paintbrush and paint or write a poem or write a song. Man, I can't do any of those things. Sometimes for me, it's journaling. Some people, that would drive them nuts to journal. And so find what works for you. Don't compare your spiritual experience to my spiritual experience. Find what works for you. So how can we start to consistently practice the disciplines? I've adapted these from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. These are just some ways that you can train yourself to develop the consistency of getting into the Bible or to practicing these disciplines. The first thing that Clear says is get a plan. Be specific about it. Write it out. Write when, where, and how you're going to practice each of the disciplines, okay? Hey, if it's read the Bible, I'm going to read the Bible at this time. I'm going to do it here, and this is how I'm going to do it. This is what my plan is. Be as specific as you can. Make it an appointment on your calendar. It should be the most important appointment that you have on your calendar. Okay, so if you're going to set the time hey, I'm going to get up, I'm going to read my Bible at 8 a.m. Okay, put that on your calendar. Get a plan and be specific about it. Second thing that Clear says is think about why you want to develop the spiritual habit or the spiritual discipline. Think about what your life will look like if you consistently practice this habit for 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years. What's the fruit? What's the result of that you're hoping for? So think about why you're doing it. And as you think about why you're doing it, it's going to motivate you to continue to do it, okay? Then the third thing that he says is repeat, repeat, repeat. Clear says, habit formation is the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition. So each day that you get out your Bible and read it, you are reprogramming your brain to make that part of who you are and part of your rhythm and part of your routine. So do it over and over. Do it day after day after day after day. Don't skip a day. Each day that you do it, each day that you get into, you practice that spiritual discipline, it's going to reprogram you and change just the way that you do things. So do it, repeat, repeat, repeat. Then the fourth thing, and this is play the long game, okay? Your satisfaction isn't going to be immediate when it comes to the spiritual disciplines. So play the long game, but as you're playing the long game, you've got to figure out how you can get some instant satisfaction, because our brain is wired to, as we're instantly gratified or instantly satisfied, hey, I need to do this again. When you feel that instant gratification, that reprograms our brain, I want to do this again. So figure out what would trigger you to feel instantly satisfied because you're practicing the discipline. Sometimes for me, it's just checking off the box. Hey, I read John chapter 4 today. Check. Sometimes it's, I've completed my journal entry for the day, and closing the journal just sometimes give me satisfaction. But find what's going to give you that instant satisfaction, that instant gratification. To close up to our conversation about spiritual disciplines, I really want spiritual revival to happen. I want to see Jesus move. I want to see Jesus work in the world. I want to see Jesus work in my country. I want to see Jesus work in my state and my city. I want to see Jesus just do a miraculous work in my church. I want to see Jesus move in my family. I want revival to happen inside of my home. And I believe that the spiritual disciplines are the key to seeing God move and work. I believe that revival won't happen until a group of people, a group of individuals, get serious about putting ourselves in a position to connect with Jesus and to let him transform us and change us. So I'm asking you, I'm challenging myself to commit to the spiritual disciplines. I believe if we commit to the disciplines, we're going to experience Jesus in some really cool ways. I believe that he's going to transform us, and I believe that he's going to change us. So I'm praying that I'll be more disciplined. I'm praying that you'll be more disciplined. I can't wait to see what God's going to do through me, and I can't wait to see what God's going to do through you. I'm praying for you. I hope you have a great day. I hope to see you really, really soon. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of Pull Up a Seat. If you've not yet subscribed, do that now so you can get content as soon as it comes out. Also, please help us get the word out by sharing on social media and inviting others to pull up a seat. Until next time, grow in your relationship with Jesus and find one way to live intentionally for him. See you next time when we pull up a seat.